You can tell a lot about someone by what they post on their social media accounts. If somebody's into art, they might post their work on Instagram. Somebody into video games might post walkthroughs on YouTube. But social media can also reveal the uglier sides of society. We see it every day in cyber and even celebrities openly feuding on Twitter or Instagram Live. But sometimes just one post can show us how awful someone truly is. Tristyn Bailey vanished from her home in St. Johns County, Florida in the early hours of May 9th, 2021. Her community was horrified by Tristyn's sudden, unexplained disappearance and came together to try and find the missing teen. But it wasn't just her disappearance that turned Tristyn from a local story to front-page news worldwide. What made this story big was the behavior of the boy that would later be arrested for her killing, and the Snapchat story that would show a whole nation just how twisted he truly is. Let's dive in. Tristyn Bailey was a 7th grade student at Patriot Oaks Academy and a passionate member of the cheerleading squad. Although there are only a few posts on her Instagram account, it's obvious that cheer and her friends were her life. She had a beautiful smile, and from what we can gather from reports, she was sweet, kind, and loved deeply by everyone in her life. May 9th was Mother's Day, but when the Bailey family woke up that Sunday morning, Tristyn wasn't in her bed or anywhere in the house. The last time they saw her was the night before, just after midnight, and they had no idea it would be the last time they'd see Tristyn alive. At 1:14 a.m., a surveillance camera recorded Tristyn walking past North Durman Amenity Center, but she wasn't alone. The recording showed Tristyn walking with a male figure, and that person was seen on the same camera walking in the opposite direction at 3:27 a.m. Tristyn wasn't with the male this time. You may be wondering what Tristyn was doing outside at that time of night, and the answer is that no one really knows yet except for the police. Because this case is so new, a lot of the details haven't been released to the media, and we may not get the full picture until later on if the case goes to trial. Many have speculated that she snuck out of the house to meet the boy she was seen walking with, so he was probably someone she knew and didn't know he wanted to harm her, which we now know he did. Just later that day, Tristyn's remains were discovered by a local man who is assisting in a search for Tristyn organized by the local community. The man was searching a wooded area close to his property when he found Tristyn near a retention pond. The news of her discovery was released 2 days later in a statement by the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office with even more disturbing details. It has now been determined by Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Predrag Bulik that the cause of death is sharp force trauma by stabbing. The manner of death is homicide. So many of the stories we've covered on this channel feature tales of incompetent police work and messy investigations. So it's great to see that Tristyn's disappearance was taken seriously enough that they were able to find her so quickly, even though they were too late to save her. So that just leaves us with 2 key questions. Who did this and why? Well, we may already have the answer to that first one.
We actually have arrested a suspect by the name of Aiden Fucci.
Reports state that Aiden and Tristyn went to the same school, and some of their classmates have come forward and stated that the two were apparently friends. This hasn't been confirmed by authorities yet, but it is something to keep in mind. It isn't clear yet what led the police to Aiden, but a section of the arrest report that's been released to media implies that it was due to the surveillance footage from the night Tristyn died. In the report, it describes the suspect wearing shorts, a light sweatshirt, and white Nike trainers with the signature black Nike logo. As they left the scene, the suspect was carrying his shoes in his hand. It could be that Aiden was positively identified from his appearance in the footage alone, or someone tipped off the police about him. Either way, a search warrant allowed the authorities to search Aiden's home, where they discovered those same clothes hidden in Aiden's bedroom. Reportedly, they were covered in blood. But it was what Aiden did as the police searched his house that made this case so famous around the world. From inside the police cruiser, Aiden took a selfie of him throwing up a peace sign with the caption, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristyn lately?" After he was taken into custody, this image went viral online and brought not only attention but speculation to the case. Many people wondered how he'd been allowed to have access to his phone while the house was being searched. According to journalist press reporting on the case, Aiden still had access to his phone because he hadn't been arrested yet and was just a person of interest. However, his social media activity did play a part in his arrest. The snap was met with massive backlash. Many saw this as Aiden bragging about his crime, while others saw it as an attempt on his part to try and make himself look better by pretending he didn't know what was going on. Allegedly, someone even responded to his snap saying Aiden knew where Tristyn was because he was with her. No doubt we'll hear even more about this as the case progresses. Because this case blew up so quickly, it attracted a lot of trolls and rumors. Many speculated that Aiden had violated Tristyn, but this was declared false after her cause of death was released. Worst of all, people have taken to social media to torment Tristyn's family and make sick jokes about her death, even going as far to suggest innocent people were involved. A teenage boy from Nashville who hadn't even heard of the case suddenly started seeing his own photos being reposted, saying he was responsible for Tristyn's death. In a statement, the teen's dad said at one point they were receiving death threats. We all are scared for our safety. As a matter of fact, we're moving on account of this. It gets worse. Someone started the hashtag #FreeAiden, and a bunch of accounts started tagging Tristyn's family in their horrible posts, saying Aiden deserved to be free, even going as far to say that Tristyn deserved what happened to her. Sheriff Rob Hardwick, who is actively participating in the case, has said he and the detectives are aware of the troll accounts doing this, and they are working on potentially having the users charged with cyber harassment crimes. After he was arrested, Aiden was charged with second-degree homicide. But what does that mean exactly? Well, first degree is when someone kills another person and plans it out beforehand. Second-degree homicide is when someone intends to kill another person, but they didn't plan to do it beforehand. Ex-police officer Derek Chauvin was famously found guilty of second-degree homicide and manslaughter for causing the death of George Floyd back in May 2020. For Aiden, this could mean a number of things. In Florida, where the crime took place, Aiden could expect to receive a sentence of 10 years minimum behind bars. This is assuming he's never been in trouble with the law before. However, these are the guidelines for an adult found guilty of this crime, and there's been no news yet whether Aiden will be tried as an adult. If he's tried as a juvenile, Aiden may only have to serve up to 15 years in prison, with a possible fine of up to $10,000. I get that these rules exist for juvenile criminals, but it doesn't seem like a lot when you consider he took someone's life. Currently, he's being held in a juvenile correctional facility while the investigation is ongoing. Many outraged members of the community are calling for Aiden to be tried as an adult and for his charge to be increased to first-degree homicide. This would make him eligible for life in prison without the possibility of parole or even capital punishment. At his first court appearance, which was held via Zoom, Aiden had tears in his eyes as he was told he'd have to remain behind bars for at least 21 days as the investigation continues. This was met with little sympathy from the public. On the other side of this case, there has been outpouring support towards Tristyn's family and friends. A fundraiser was started by a family friend so they could pay for Tristyn's memorial and help her family through this time. The target of the GoFundMe was $20,000. And it has already been made more than double than that. In the days following Tristyn's passing, several vigils have been held in memory of the teen. Hundreds gathered at the last place Tristyn was seen alive, holding candles and laying down bunches of flowers tied together with aqua-colored ribbons. Aqua was her favorite color and has kind of become a symbol of remembrance for Tristyn. At this time, Tristyn's family has asked for the media and supporters to kindly respect their privacy as they mourn Tristyn. However, her sister did make a public post on Facebook, thanking everyone for all they've done. The gifts, prayers, thoughts, messages, donations, hugs, and memories shared have been overwhelming. We cannot believe the boundless outcry of support for Tristyn and our family. As the investigation continues, I can only hope that Tristyn's family gets the answers they deserve. In Ireland, if someone is found guilty of committing homicide, then the punishment is a mandatory life sentence. But what happens when the culprit isn't even old enough to go to court without their parents at their side? The death of Anna Kriegel was a first for Ireland's criminal justice system. This was the case of a young girl who had her life taken by two boys in one of the most awful ways. Now known as the youngest killers in Ireland's history, will the culprits ever be able to lead normal lives? More importantly, do they deserve to? Let's dive in. Anastasia Kriegel was born in Nadkuznik, Russia on February 18th, 2004. She had a really tough start in life. She was abandoned at an orphanage not long after she was born, and it would take 2 years for her to find her forever family. She was adopted by Geraldine and Patrick Kriegel, a couple from the county of Fingal in Ireland. They'd been unable to have children of their own, so decided to adopt, and they were in love with Anna from the second they met her. When they took her to her new life in Ireland, they tried to make sure they raised her with the knowledge of her Russian heritage by keeping her birth name. Although Anna was a happy kid, and she loved her parents, she had difficulties with school and making friends her whole life. Because she was already a toddler when she was brought to Ireland, she was pretty far behind on her English language skills, which made going to school challenging. Although she didn't really care that much about studying, Anna loved sports and she was super athletic. She started dancing at a young age and continued throughout her life, as well as competitive swimming. She also had a bunch of health issues. She once had to have a lump removed, which made her pretty much deaf in her right ear. She also had really bad eyesight, and as she got older, suffered from horrible pain in her body because her bones grew faster than her muscles. Whether it was her athleticism, her genetics, or a combination of both, she looked way older than she was. At 13, she stood 5 foot 8 inches tall, and strangers sometimes mistook her for an 18-year-old. Unfortunately, her height and her difficult past made her the target of mean comments from other kids. Anna had a tough time making friends, and usually spent time with kids younger than her, especially her younger cousin. This made her way more naive and innocent than someone her age, so much so that her teachers were worried about her starting high school. The nastiness from other students only got worse when she did start high school. Like most teens, Anna spent a lot of time on social media, and she was always subjected to online hate from her peers. Her parents got so worried that they started taking her phone away in the evenings, and they would go through all the mean messages and comments she received. They discovered that for some reason, Anna had created fake accounts and used them to say bad things about herself, along with kids at the school. Her parents decided to send her to counseling. She started attending after-school sessions with therapists in the weeks before she died, and she was actually getting better. That was until May 14th, 2018. That day, Anna walked home from school to eat lunch before heading out to her counseling appointment. When she came home that afternoon, she tried to call her mom, but she didn't pick up because she was in a meeting. The last time Geraldine ever spoke to her daughter was that morning, when she kissed her goodbye on the way to school. Anna's dad was in the garden, enjoying the rare amount of sunshine they had for a day in March. At around 5 p.m., someone knocked on the door. It was a teenage boy asking for Anna. When her dad told her the boy was at the door for her, she looked confused. Anna knew of the boy because they went to the same school, but they weren't friends. Anna went and spoke to him anyway, a conversation that Patrick didn't overhear. Anna told him she was going out but would be back soon, and gave him a big smile before leaving her home for the last time. When Geraldine came home from work and found Anna still wasn't home or answering any of her calls, she became concerned. It was out of character for Anna to go walking around in the evening with boys, but even weirder for her not to answer her phone. Geraldine sent a stern text telling Anna to come home, but there was no reply. She and Patrick ate dinner, then she went out looking for Anna. She was nowhere to be seen. Back at home, they logged onto Facebook and started looking for the boy's profile. They recognized him, but didn't know who he was or how to contact his parents. They spoke to one of their close friends, a retired detective, who told them to report Anna missing to the Gardaí, which is the name of the police in Ireland. The first thing the Gardaí did was to go to the home of the boy and ask him where he'd gone with Anna. He said they'd went to the park together, then he left her there and went home to finish his homework. The park was searched, but nothing came up. By the next day, the whole community was aware of Anna's disappearance, and many friends and neighbors took time out of their morning to help look for her. Anna was known for taking long walks by herself, so they looked all over the area and in more natural areas of the neighborhood in case she was injured or lost. The Gardaí went back to speak to the boy again, and this time he had a different story to tell. He told them that he went to Anna's house that day to bring her to one of his friends, who he said Anna had a crush on. The other boy, known as Boy A, knew this, but didn't feel the same, and wanted to tell Anna in person. According to the other boy, now named Boy B, Anna left with Boy A and went home. They took Boy B back to the park and told him to walk through the route they'd taken at the park before he left, and they marked the trail as well. That same day, an appeal was issued for any information on Anna's whereabouts. A few tips came in, more than one reporting they'd seen a girl wearing a distinctive sweatshirt that Anna wore when she vanished. Unfortunately, none of the leads went anywhere. They decided to take a look into boy A. They took both boys back to the park and asked them to show them where they walked. The Jardine noticed a couple of red flags. One was that boy B was trying to walk down a different path than the one he originally shown them, as if trying to lead them away from something. They also noticed that boy A was walking with a limp. Boy A said he was jumped by two men after meeting with Anna. He had injuries to his leg, arm, and a cut on his face. The Jardine thought this was really weird and decided to take the boys to the station to make official statements. Their stories matched up. Boy B gave the story he'd already told them, that boy A asked him to bring Anna to the park so they could talk, and boy B left them alone. With both boys acting strangely and no sign of Anna, the Jardine were now super worried something bad had happened to her, and they made the search more urgent. They found Anna on May 17th. Glenwood House was an old farmhouse down a path leading away from the park where Anna was last seen. The house had been abandoned for years and was known as a huge hangout spot for teenagers. That day, a search team was sent to check out the house. They had to be careful going into the house. It was in such bad condition, the roof could literally fall on them at any second. The officer that found Anna later said he could definitely smell dried blood before he saw what he thought was a mannequin on the floor. It was Anna. When they found her, she was only wearing her black socks, and there were injuries all over her. Nearby, they found her clothes, her destroyed iPhone, a concrete block, and a wooden plank, both of which had her hair and blood on them. There was also tape wrapped around her neck. It was determined she died due to head and neck injuries. It was also found that she'd been violated. The Jardine blocked off access to the house as they investigated, looking for any evidence to identify the killer. They could see that Anna put up a fight. Her false nails were scattered everywhere, and some of the bruising on her arms and legs were defensive. They found human DNA on Anna's clothing, and they already had suspects in mind, the two boys. The Jardine took all the electronics belonging to the boys and searched their homes. The evidence they uncovered did not work well in the boys' favor. On the phone of boy A, they discovered a lot of disturbing images and some strange results in his search history. He'd researched gruesome ways to kill people and abandoned places in their town. But that wasn't all. In boy A's house, they also found a journal that gave them an insight into the mind of these potential criminals. The title of the journal was The Satanic Pledge, and it was written by boy A. The book contained drawings of pentagrams and other images related to Satan, as well as a list of rules about the club. They weren't allowed to talk about God or Jesus, don't talk about the club, and most disturbingly, act normal, like nothing happened. Boy A and boy B were charged with causing Anna's death, and boy A was also charged with violating her. They appeared at court with their parents. Boy B held his mom's hand during his trial, and reports said it was difficult to imagine they'd done such a terrible thing. The story told to the jury was that boy B had lured Anna to the park to meet with boy A. From there, they all walked to the abandoned house where Anna died. Boy B left the scene at 5:50 p.m., and boy A left 10 minutes later. The Jardine managed to figure out thanks to CCTV in the area. There was evidence to suggest the crime was planned. A couple of weeks before anything happened, boy A asked boy B over text if he'd ever wanted to kill someone. Boy B said no, but asked who boy A wanted to kill. He named Anna. They were found guilty of their crimes, and the discussion around their sentencing was tricky. The age of the culprits was taken into account when deciding their sentence, as well as the severity of the crime and whether or not they could be rehabilitated. Boy A was given a life sentence, but it may be reviewed in 2031. He was sentenced to a further 8 years for violating Anna. Boy B was sentenced to 15 years in prison, but his sentence will be reviewed in 2027. They are the youngest people ever to be found guilty of homicide in Ireland. After their daughter's killers were sentenced, her parents gave a comment to the media outside the courthouse and said they don't believe the sentence was enough. Traveling is beautiful. It helps us learn about the world, experience new cultures, meet new people, and taste different food types. Every year, millions of youths travel across the world for work, education, or vacation. Most have very positive experiences, some not so much, while others never come home alive. Lindsay was one of the unlucky few whose travel abroad turned out to be a terrible nightmare. Let's dive in. Lindsay Ann Hawker grew up in Brandon, Warwickshire, a small village near Coventry, England. She lived with her parents Bill and Julia and two sisters, Lisa and Louise. She attended King Henry VIII School and was later studying biology at University of Leeds. She graduated with first-class honors and was described as a bright student with infectious enthusiasm. Lindsay was popular and outgoing, and although she had plans to pursue a master's degree, she decided to take a gap year to teach English in Japan. In 2006, Lindsay hopped on a plane to Tokyo to start teaching at the Koei branch of Nova, the then largest private English conversation school in Japan. She got an apartment with two other female teachers, one from Australia and the other from Canada. The three quickly became friends and explored the city together. Lindsay adapted quickly to her new environment. She loved her job, had new friends, and was really enjoying her stay in Tokyo. Lindsay kept in close contact with her family through email, telephone, and Skype. She would often rave on and on about how great her experience was and how good the people were. 5 months passed by quickly, and it seemed like Lindsay had wholly adjusted to life on the other side of the globe. And then one day, she had just gotten off the train and was heading home from work when a man approached her and asked if she was his teacher. The guy was a complete stranger, so Lindsay answered no and continued walking. The guy followed her, insisting that he was one of her students. Lindsay started getting uneasy. There was just something off about him, and he was totally creeping her out. So she got on her bike and tried to cycle away, but the creepy man kept following her. She cycled faster, and he increased his pace. Soon, Lindsay was cycling like her life depended on it, and the guy was just running after her at full speed. She soon got home and was just about to bolt into the house when the man, completely out of breath, caught up with her and asked for a glass of water. Lindsay was still getting a bad vibe about this guy, and she was not about to let him inside her apartment. But then she remembered that she didn't live alone and decided to let him in so her other roommates could see his face, just in case. When they got inside the house, the man asked Lindsay if she would give him some private English lessons. He offered to pay generously for her efforts. The school did not object to teachers giving private lessons, so Lindsay agreed to teach him on the condition that they meet at a public place. They agreed to meet on Saturday at a local coffee shop for the first lesson. Before leaving, the guy quickly drew a picture of Lindsay and signed it with his name, telephone, and email address. His name was Tatsuya Ichihashi. He was 28 years old and still lived off his parents, who were successful medical professionals. Tatsuya had graduated from the Department of Horticulture at Chiba University in 2005, but never tried to find a job. He had never been found guilty of a crime, but there had been some claims of theft and injury where he apparently violated a woman on the street during a burglary. The matter was, however, settled out of court. Tatsuya is said to have been super obsessed with physical fitness and would hit the gym daily and cycle 15 miles every day. On March 24, 2007, Lindsay told her roommates that she'd be giving Tatsuya an English lesson at a local cafe. A surveillance camera inside the coffee shop captured this meeting, and everything seemed to go well. But soon after the lesson, Tatsuya claimed to have forgotten his wallet at home and asked Lindsay if she could come with him and get her money. Super convenient, right? But Lindsay needed the money, plus the lesson had gone so well she felt that maybe she had misjudged him the other night. So she reluctantly agreed, and the two took a cab to Tatsuya's apartment. When they arrived, Lindsay asked the cab driver to wait for her, since she would just head in to pick up her money and return. The driver agreed and stayed for only 7 minutes and then drove off. That night, Lindsay never came home. The following day, when she still hadn't come home, her roommates were starting to get worried, and they called the police to report her missing. But the police didn't take it seriously, so nothing happened. Lindsay's family was also beginning to get worried since she was not replying to their emails and texts. After Lindsay failed to show up at work for 2 days, the school reported her missing and called her family in England. Tatsuya's name was the first to crop up. Since he had left his address on Lindsay's picture, the officers already knew where to find him, but nothing would have prepared them for what they saw in that apartment. Lindsay's body was into a bathtub filled with a mixture of compost soil and sand on the apartment's balcony. She had been tied up and with plastic ties and scarves. The police believed that Tatsuya had planned to bury Lindsay in concrete or wait for her to decompose in the bathtub. He had made several trips to a local hardware store where he bought all the material he needed to hurry the decomposition process. The police believed that her captor had killed her to death and then, for some strange, disturbing reason, shaved her head. The news devastated Lindsay's family. They could not bring themselves to imagine the kind of horror their daughter went through before she died. The family got on the first flight to Tokyo, where the Japanese police had started an extensive search for Tatsuya. He was placed on the nation's most wanted list, and his face was burned into the minds of everyone across the country, from posters in the media, railway stations, and other public places. They even used talking, life-size cutouts to track Tatsuya down, but he always seemed to be 10 steps ahead and managed to remain hiding for more than 2 years. Lindsay's family traveled to Japan many times, appearing on television and handing out leaflets in train stations.
Please keep looking. It will only take one lead to find this man, and if anybody's watching this and is protecting him, don't protect him. He doesn't deserve protection. He needs to be brought to justice for what he's done.
Meanwhile, Tatsuya was going to extreme lengths to avoid getting caught. He cut up his lips to make them thinner, removed the 2 moles from his cheeks, and bound up his nose with a thread and needle to make it narrower. He didn't stop there. He traveled up and down the country, doing odd jobs to pay for various other procedures on his face. Therefore, while the police were distributing his pictures, Tatsuya was going around with a different face and identity. He even worked as a construction worker for more than a year without getting recognized. But it was this obsession to make himself unrecognizable that led to his arrest. While in one cosmetic clinic, the doctor noticed traces of moles on his left cheek and grew suspicious. He called the police and sent pictures of Tatsuya's new appearance, which they splashed in all Japanese newspapers. In November 2009, Tatsuya was arrested while trying to board a ferry to a remote island. He had been on the run for more than 2 years. He was first charged with abandoning a body, but later 2 more charges of homicide and defilement. During his trial, Tatsuya admitted to having caused Lindsay's death, but claimed he didn't intend to kill her and that he was trying to stop her for screaming for help as he violated her. He tried to apologize to Lindsay's family through a letter that read, "I was evil. There's no one to blame but me. I will take responsibility. I will never forget about her and what I did to her and you. I will carry my cross until the moment of my death. I am very sorry. I not only destroyed her life, but I also changed your lives." Lindsay's family refused to accept the letter and the apology and asked the court to give him the ultimate sentence. They said that he did not show any remorse for his actions and was just trying to get a lighter sentence. Although Japan has death by hanging for homicide, it's usually reserved for those who take the lives of more than one person. Lindsay's family asked for the death penalty for Tatsuya, but he was sentenced to life in prison instead. As he was 32 at the time and had no prior convictions, the justice system still believes there is a chance he can be rehabilitated. This may not have been what Lindsay's family had hoped for, but they still felt that justice was served.
We've worked tirelessly as a family. We've never given in for our daughter. We've never given in. We wanted justice, and we've finally got justice.
Tatsuya would then publish a book titled Until I Was Arrested. He talks about his time in hiding and how he underwent plastic surgery to avoid getting arrested. The book turned out to be a bestseller, and he offered all the royalties to go to Lindsay's family, but they rejected his offer. Lindsay's family may never get over the pain of losing their daughter and sister, but I hope that they may find solace in knowing that her killer will spend the rest of his life in prison. Do you guys ever come across a true crime story that just sticks with you? It plays in your mind, you find yourself searching for updates every day, that kind of thing? Well, the story we're looking at today is kinda like that. This is one of the rare cases where a crime outside of the US captivated the whole world. And despite taking place over 10 years ago, it's still talked about today. In fact, one of the most memorable things about this case isn't the crime itself, but the social impact it had on society and how people responded to it. This is the case of Nevada Tan. The year was 2004, a time when social media was barely a thing, and the internet was still run by forums and messaging boards. In the city of Sasebo town on June 1st, 2004, it looked like it was going to be any other day. That morning, the streets bustled with cars on their way to work and kids headed off to school. Nobody suspected that when they sent their child off to class that day, it might be the last time they'd ever see them alive. But that day, there were 2 families about to have their lives changed forever. Natsumi Tsuji and Satomi Nitiari were both known to be good friends. They shared a lot of the same classes and played together on the school basketball team. However, what few people knew was that a feud had started between the 2 elementary school students just days before. Back in 2004, when you couldn't talk to your friends on social media, people made messaging boards to talk outside of school. They weren't nearly as sophisticated as social media apps that we have today, but they got the job done. This was also the birthplace of online problems. Satomi had said some pretty nasty things to Natsumi on one of these boards, making comments about her weight and calling her a goody-goody in class. Now, kids fight all the time, right? I know I used to fall out with my friends all the time in elementary school over the dumbest stuff, but by recess, it was all totally forgotten about. That wasn't the case for Natsumi. What her mom didn't realize that morning when she kissed her daughter goodbye on the way to school was that Natsumi had a secret. In her pocket, she was carrying a concealed box cutter. The first part of the morning went on as normal. Both girls went to class, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary until lunch break, when Natsumi asked Satomi to come with her to an empty classroom. As soon as the two were alone, Natsumi lunged at the girl who used to be her friend. She stabbed her arms multiple times and eventually cut Satomi's throat, an injury that would result in the end of her life. Natsumi stayed to watch Satomi die, standing over her as she bled out on the classroom floor. After she stopped breathing, Natsumi kicked her in the head just to make sure she was truly gone. Still holding the box cutter and covered in blood, Natsumi left Satomi in the classroom and returned to the one they had just came from, where everyone was still having lunch. When her class and teachers saw Natsumi covered in red, they all assumed she'd hurt herself. That was until she said, "This is not my blood." Police were contacted immediately, and they arrived at the scene in minutes. Nobody could believe what they were hearing. Obviously, murders occurred throughout Japan, but rarely did they happen in places like Sasebo, and almost never by kids. When they arrived, they found that Natsumi had drawn the curtains to the classroom before she lured Satomi in. Satomi was found lying face down on the floor with no signs of life. The school had the task of making a very difficult call to Satomi's father, Koijoy Mitiari, who rushed down to the school as soon as he could when he heard that his daughter was hurt. At the time, he didn't know the full extent of her injuries. Koijoy was a widower and was raising his 3 children alone. After already losing his wife, Satomi's mom, to cancer a few years earlier, I can't imagine how awful this loss must have been for him. In an interview, he said that he couldn't imagine life without Satomi around, that she was like air to him. When it came time to arrest Natsumi, she was reported to already severely regret her actions. She reportedly confessed to the crime on the spot and told the police that she'd done a very bad thing. She professed that she was sorry over and over again, and they took her into custody. Once down at the station, Natsumi refused to speak or eat any of the food offered to her by the officers. She just totally shut down. This was pretty frustrating for the officers, who were eager to understand why she would do this to someone she used to be such good friends with. She spent the night at the station and could often be heard crying. The next morning, she finally accepted some bread and juice and told the police why she'd committed this awful crime. By this point, the media had gotten hold of the case and the details were spreading like wildfire. Hundreds of people offered their condolences to Satomi and her family. Others called for justice against Natsumi, who was known as Girl A in the media due to her age. In the 2 months before Natsumi's trial, investigators took a deep dive into her past and tried to figure out what would drive someone so young to kill another human being. Although she was thought to be a good student, there were several signs that Natsumi was having some difficulties. She loved playing basketball and had a healthy number of friends, but in recent months, things had started going wrong. Her parents were unsatisfied with her grades and as a result made Natsumi quit the basketball team to focus on studying. She was under a lot of pressure to maintain grades as well as participate in after-school activities, which would be crucial in the future for her to get into good schools. But that wasn't all. Natsumi had gained an interest in dark media, cartoons, and movies that definitely weren't appropriate for her age range. She was reportedly really into battle royale books, which are about a group of students who are trapped on an island and have to fight to the death so a lone survivor can leave the island alive. Psychologists also discovered previous incidents that Natsumi had had, including fighting other students and bringing a sharp object to school with her just a month before Satomi's murder. This started a real discussion around internet content and how parents could stop their children from accessing this kind of material. Although it's hard to say, if Natsumi hadn't found out about this stuff online, then it's possible she never would have thought to do what she did to Satomi. It's been suggested she may have been suffering from hikikomori syndrome, which includes symptoms such as internet addiction, social withdrawal, and depression, but it was never confirmed. On September 15th, 2004, a Japanese family court ruled that Natsumi should be institutionalized. Despite not being diagnosed with any psychological illness, the severity of her crime led the court to overlook her age age and consider how dangerous she was to his society, and if there was any hope she could be rehabilitated. Her original sentence was 2 years in an institution in Tochi Prefecture, but this was extended by a further 2 years at her hearing in 2006. In October 2005, Natsumi and Satomi would have been graduating from elementary school with the rest of their class. They were still awarded with graduation certificates. This was controversial as many believe Natsumi should not have received a certificate, but this was a move by the court, who wanted to give Natsumi a chance to enter society as a proper citizen in the future. In 2008, Natsumi was released from the custody of the institution and placed under house arrest. In 2013, she was fully released into the care of her family, who moved to an unknown location in Japan, and she continues to live as a free woman today, under a new identity and out of the public eye. But that isn't the end of the story. The reaction that Satomi's murder got in the media was weird, to say the least. There was a lot of mystery surrounding the case, especially in terms of the girls' ages and Natsumi's identity. Although the public didn't know her real name, a photo of her had started to circulate around the internet, specifically one where she's seen wearing a University of Nevada sweatshirt. This got people to start calling her Nevada Tan. Tan is a cutesy variation of Chan, which means friend. People seemed totally fascinated by her and the fact that she'd done something so awful at such a young age. It was also rumored that she was wearing the Nevada sweatshirt when she killed Satomi. The topic of Nevada Tan became popular on messaging boards in Japan and across the rest of the world. People would draw cartoons of Natsumi wearing the sweatshirt and covered in blood, drawing her in a classic Japanese style known as chibi, which makes characters look super cute and childlike. It was almost like they turned her into a whole character, creating little comics of her hurting other cartoon characters in the same way she had done Satomi. It got so bad that the University of Nevada temporarily stopped selling their sweatshirts after a huge surge in sales. Since her release, many have tried to uncover her new identity and track her down, but so far, no one has been successful. To be honest, I hope they don't, and I hope that one day this whole trend stops. It's like everyone forgot that Natsumi isn't a fictional character, and neither was Satomi. She really died, and it's pretty weird to me that someone could be a fan of that. Wherever Natsumi is, I hope that she was rehabilitated. Not necessarily for her sake, but for the safety of the people out there who don't know about her past, or what she is, or once was, capable of. What do you guys think of this case? Do you think Natsumi knows about her internet fame? As always, I can't wait to see what you think down in the comments below.